Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Runcie. I'm the Director of Nonprofit and Community Outreach here at Advisicon. I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Maximizing SharePoint for Effective Project Management. A quick summary of who we are here at Advisicon. We're a passionate group of authors, teachers, consultants, and technologists that care about helping organizations learn, scale, and grow with a mix of methodology and technology to deliver results. No matter the company's size, our team specializes in maximizing your business and personal productivity by leveraging the Microsoft technology experience. We want to help you do your job better so you can make the world a better place. We offer bi-weekly webinars here at Advisicon, which we like to refer to as Webinar Wednesdays. We spend about 30 minutes to an hour teaching topics ranging from Microsoft Project, Project Server, Project Online, Power BI, Visio, SharePoint, to project program and portfolio management and methodology approaches. With attending any of our Webinar Wednesdays, you will receive a free half PDU. Today's webinar, Maximizing SharePoint for Effective Project Management, will give you that half PDU. Now, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. Please review the control panel that should be at the top right of your screen. This control panel gives you the option to adjust the volume, screen, and other settings. The audience is muted, so in order to ask questions, you will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them for you at the question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce Tim Runcie, a Microsoft MVP for more than 15 consecutive years, and most importantly, Advisicon's president and owner. Take it away, Tim.
Thanks, Allison. Welcome, everyone, to Webinar Wednesday. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And for those of you that haven't heard Allison before, she is our new Director of Nonprofits and Community Outreach Programs, which is very exciting as we begin to serve folks who are really passionate about helping the community, but maybe struggling with project management or even technology. In fact, I think we all struggle with sometimes project management, program and portfolio management, and technology. So I'm very glad to have you here today. Our session we're going to go through is going to talk about the role of SharePoint, certainly in project management, and we'll be drilling into how to leverage it for collaboration. I'll be showing some best practices, tips, tricks, shortcuts, and also some things that are coming, right? As we know that some of you are in Office 365 now, some people are on premise, it's really helpful to understand where is this collaboration portal going and how can we best take advantage of that as we work with that. So we will take some questions, so I always encourage people to reach out, post questions as we have them, and of course if we can't answer everything, feel free to reach out to us anytime. So let me dig in a little bit deeper here about the project management solution spectrum. Now, this says Microsoft Project Management, but it doesn't just mean Microsoft Project, because there's an entire solution spectrum around supporting people being productive in their business needs. So if we look at the horizontal axis, we talk about in your work world, if you have little or no collaboration, people just jump in, they start doing Excel, they'll do Outlook, they'll do task list. Some people even just use SharePoint to keep track of their tasks and activities. But as that collaboration spectrum grows, as we begin moving across the horizontal spectrum, you begin to need more and more of the integration components. And what I've done here is I've highlighted kind of in this journey, which is as you increase your process or your standards or how you want people to interact, I've kind of highlighted areas where SharePoint starts sticking and poking its nose in or completely owns the entire environment for what we're working with. One thing that we're going to see for sure is that as we move into and leverage more and more with SharePoint is that this tool, while it may be releasing little pieces, is actually becoming a platform, and that's where we see a lot of the Office 365 components, not just in SharePoint, but working collaboratively together. So today I'll talk a little bit about on-premise versus on-site as well. So let's get in and let's take a look at some of the things with SharePoint that would help you as a project manager really maximize what you're doing in terms of our effective use in our day-to-day project program and portfolio needs. So of course I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration. And so if you don't get this yet, and some of us technologists love to hide behind our desk and we build great dashboards and we'll build automation or we'll build a massive schedule, but 90% of project management is not working technology. It's really about communication and the idea of having a central place for people to work, send, share information, post issues, wrestle with calendars, or at least have a watering hole to come to is important, and that's a role that SharePoint will play. So as we begin to look at this in general, we're going to see more and more device-driven access. And what that means is we're not talking about, hey, I go to my laptop or go to my desktop. We're talking about mobile access. I need to find information. I need to do a search right from my cell phone to find a document. And so beginning to leverage a browser-based technology or a collaboration portal becomes more and more important. And the infrastructure of SharePoint, which has been pretty solid for quite a bit of time, continues to expand upon our ability to leverage that. Now, as we dig in even deeper, we'll get into a little bit more around what we call the collaboration. Whoops, here we go. Collaboration around the navigation. So in this picture here, I couldn't believe somebody actually had that many GPSs. But in general, if you've ever ridden an Uber or a Lyft, they'll have multiple kind of navigation components on the screen, or they'll have a cell phone or something that's open. But the idea is that we definitely want to be able to go in and take a look at how to set some of that navigation up ourselves, as well as just kind of streamline the ability for people to get into that information. Now, I'm going to hop into SharePoint right now. Let me just kind of pop over here. And let's bring this up. So I'm in what we call Office 365, but I'm also going to jump into a 2013 environment because I know not everybody is actually fully into either 365, or you may not have deployed SharePoint 2016. But the idea is that as we begin to go to an environment, I'll see tiles, I'll see things that I can touch, easily click on or drill down into it. If you're using some of the Microsoft project, in fact, if you're using even the new version of licensing a project, you can stop saving your files locally. You can start drilling directly into where those projects are and make them visible in a browser. Now you'll notice here I've got a little bit of a ribbon at the top, and so we talk about project management tools like Project as a service that's running inside of SharePoint, meaning that while we might have schedules and we have resource pools and we publish, we're still using this environment that completely cloaks and wraps these two together. And if I want to drill into a specific project, you're going to see opportunities where instead of putting everything up on the ribbon, you're going to watch where we're actually drilling into what we call these ellipses. And so I might want to go in and just drill right to the project site. I may want to go to the schedule, but the idea is I can visualize that information. So now I've just left kind of a project management environment and basically gone from this Enterprise Edition right down into a SharePoint site dedicated for a project. And what's great about this is if you do decide to hit publish versus saving local files, is that you can connect SharePoint right to Microsoft Project. But today's story is not about Project, it's about SharePoint. And so as we look here, you'll notice we talk about navigation as we have this environment, and you go, well, hey Tim, where'd the ribbon go? In fact, if I go and I activate or I click on a particular window, I'm going to see that I can turn on that ribbon by activating it, but now I don't quite have everything that shows up the same way. Or as I'm looking in that environment itself from SharePoint and I need to find it, I'm not so much driving it always with a kind of a 3/4 inch space across the top. So we refer to things that we call top navigation. So if I click on edit links here, as I literally can drag a link, I can pull a URL and drop it in here, or I could just sit here and type it. I can add things that I want. And so I'm in a position where I can say, hey, listen, this is an important site. I want to actually run out to despair.com, and I'll just put here www.despair.com. And if you've never been to Despair, these are the original people who built the demotivators. Always a lot of fun going to their site here. Now, it is going to correct you if you're not putting your HTTP or you're putting your colons or what you're putting in here. So the idea is you want to make sure, a lot of times we'll just go to the actual site itself, and we'll bring that up. So in setting up of our environment, whether we want to test it or try it, you can kind of do your navigation real quickly and say, hey, did I type it right? Did I put it in the right place? Did I actually make the access of that information? And the short answer is I can add these right up here, save, and I can set up kind of a quick navigation. In fact, usually your top nav is designed to help you go to functional areas. In many cases, we'll talk about different entire sites or pages that you work with. Where the left nav, or we have our quick launch bar here, You can also edit your links. In fact, I can click over here, I can click X, and I can remove these. So as a project manager or a site administrator, it's very helpful to put things that are elements that you want to see. You could even just say, look, I've got the documents library right here on my main screen, but I'm also going to put it over here in case I'm in a news feed or I drill into my issues and risks, and I can visualize those. So in terms of some of that visibility, it's helpful to see where that information goes. And as I drill in here, for example, and I click on risks, you'll notice that I don't just start with a big ribbon. In fact, I actually have to click on it, and we're going to see less and less of this ribbon. In fact, what you're going to find is that I even go into, say, my document libraries. You'll notice that even in Office 365 that Microsoft is beginning to remove the functionality of that ribbon. And what they're doing is helping to speed up that process that says, well, you're going to see these ellipses that say, look, instead of having a whole set of toolbar buttons up there that we use ongoing, what we may want to do is manage what we see by a very small menu, but essentially when I go in and I'm looking at my life cycle, my documents here, if I hover over these, you'll see a little ellipses here on the right here. If you click, it'll actually give you the context-sensitive menu. So instead of having all of these sitting up on your menu, what you're going to see is just drill down. It's a cleaner interface, a little bit easier to get to. What I find very helpful is that if people are using tablets or touch screens, this becomes very intuitive. You just click, you point, you know where you're going, versus trying to move your mouse and find that. Now let me stay here for a moment and hop over to a 2013 environment. Whoops, there we go. So here's a 2013 SharePoint environment. Same thing though, except when I click on my document libraries, that I have my top nav, I have my left nav available to edit my links. But again, as I activate a portion or piece of the environment, I still have my ribbon at the top here. So we're going to see some transitional elements coming. And so for productivity is you want to make this clean and easy for people to work with. So if I go back to our home page here, which is kind of our site, keeping a lot of this out of the box, as we're going to really find is what do we want to say? What are the most important elements that we want to visualize on these? So as we hop over to our PowerPoint, as we continue to think about list, links, and libraries. In fact, that's really kind of the phraseology that we work with, is that you have these key elements that are important to work with. These lists, links, or libraries really serve as basically what we refer to as database tables. You can actually mine them, you can sort them, you can filter them, not just search for information, but you can actually create charts and graphs that look to a document library, or look to an issues or risks or a task library, and summarizes that. So there's visualization that you can manage and begin to work with, and a lot of people are not aware is that you can put 18 million records in some of these libraries or lists of information. So the most common ones that we find is that people will hop in, and everyone predominantly uses, issues or risks or tasks that they want to track, typically in SharePoint. Obviously, there's a document collaboration component there, and we'll spend some more time here. Very commonly, we see people creating contact lists, maybe some threaded discussions. They post some key events or information, and these are all basically web parts that we're able to work from. Let me go back here. However, where it says use views versus folders, this is a core concept that we want to make sure that as you begin to go forward is that if you're using a library, you want to use the artifacts or objects that you put inside of there. Well, yes, you can still create folders and organize it in a 20th century mentality, meaning you can store documents in folders. But we talk about permissioning, we talk about getting into searching information. It's much better if you actually begin to use it as an organized environment. Now let me go back into SharePoint real quickly, and let's talk about that some more. So if I come back over here, and I've got a landing page here, and if I decide I want to edit this, you can certainly come up here to the gear wheel, go up and edit the page. You can add an application, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But if I like what I've got here, or I'm designing the layout, if I drill into a library, in this view here, I'm just showing kind of the documents themselves, and I can see that I can actually, if I zoom this, whoops, let's go back to one page, is that I can go in and I can actually drag files and drop files directly here. Now, it doesn't fill out any information about it, but if I go to the document library itself, is that I can start building views that allow me to see what columns or tasks. In fact, you'll see little pluses here that say if you want to add a column, you can add it right on the fly. Didn't have to edit this page, didn't have to go edit the app. I can do it right here from the menu. And of course, as I'm looking in the library itself, you'll notice that I have a view up here that just says, hey, let's go ahead and look at this in all documents. Or I can just go ahead and look at a particular view that will sort or filter the information. In this case, I'm using a lifecycle field for that information that says, well, maybe I'm bringing up over my documents. I want to kind of edit or manage these. And every one of these artifacts, if I come over here, for example, to my project RACI matrix, I might want to click on this. I can go into and look at the information about alerting me, or if I want to go into details, if I click on this, instead of trying to edit it and go into a separate window to edit that, I'm actually able to come in and actually work directly with those metadata properties. In fact, here it is, lifecycle execution. I can click, I can change that to closeout, and I'm in a position where I can edit or manage that information. And again, as I either want to roll this out or roll it in, I've got a little information button here. A lot of this is designed to be intuitively on the screen. And as I go from execution or to go to initiation, I can actually see I can move these artifacts around and I can manage my views. You can actually control what people see by simply creating columns and filters for that. So as a best practice, you certainly can do that. And of course, you're still not limited to the old approach to using folders. However, it's not necessarily the best practice when you go forward and manage these. You're also going to see in the environment that we work with is that sometimes you want to massage this library to say, well, what about version control? And so if you notice, we have the waffle up here on the left-hand side, which allows me to really jump around any of the environment that I have, say in Office 365, or if you're on-premise, if we sneak back over here, back to our on-premise environment, I would use a link or a top nav to simply take me where I needed to go. But always, 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 we're in a place where we may want to manage the details of the library or what you're working on. So as I come back into my working environment here, whoops, let's go right to this page. Let me close my waffle. If I want to continue to control or manage what I see here, again, I'm going to look at where are those objects. So here's my menu, a lot cleaner. I can certainly add new documents. I can create folders. It's still available. But in general, you've got your lifecycle view and information. And if I click on the gear wheel, which is what you're going to see in most of the internet browser and other Microsoft Windows, is that as we go here, I can go right to my library settings. As a project manager, a lot of times people will take and put documents in there. And then they'll be doing 3 or 4 different versions, and so you'll see date stamps, time stamps. Sometimes people will even put in these convoluted names as if they were working in an old file structure. But of course, you can come in here, and this is really powerful. Using your library settings, you can come in, you can clean this up, you can add columns, but you're also in a position, if you really want to, is to turn on what we call versioning settings. Do you want to have versioning, major, minor revision? How many copies do you want to keep in terms of that library? So literally you can keep track of multiple documents, but yet it is still the same document. And the idea is you can have the ability to check it in or check it out. You can force check in and force check out documents. So if you're using a document library as a project manager, instead of having people put 15 copies of the same file, date stamping each one, you can turn on version control and it will unclutter the amount of things that you'll find in your libraries. Or instead of having an archive folder where you're dragging and dropping in SharePoint, is that your document is always current and you can go back and revert to those as you work in your environment. Again, very helpful in managing some of those views and views information. Now let's talk a little bit about folders and metadata information. We've kind of highlighted this a little bit, but I want to show you some things that you're going to find with different types of libraries that you work with. So again, think of a filing cabinet. We want to organize or structure our documentation, but the views in terms of your folder is going to allow you to quickly find, sort, filter, and control what people see based upon who they are. It also works much better if you have search enabled so that you at some point will not be penetrating all the folders or the subfolders or all the problems that people experience with a file share where one group file folds it differently than another group, is that you're not trying to stash and store these. You really are controlling the overall structure of the document library. We also can get into doing workflows, which if you hadn't seen that, let me come back over here to our current version of SharePoint. Is that if I go back into my documents here, you'll notice that we have some new tools starting to appear in our environment. You'll see something called Flow, which is a tool that's designed in at least Office 365 that requires no development to do simple or straightforward automation. So you can basically build this and attach it to certain types of documents. Very commonly, as you might be routing something for approval. Hey, I've got the final document done. Please sign off on it. So there's some things that you're going to find that are going to continue to enable and be visible in your SharePoint environment. Now remember, Flow is only for Office 365. If you're on premise, you'll be dealing certainly with either a third-party tool, or perhaps you're using the SharePoint Designer, or maybe even using a .NET workflow. But you've got the options now where I don't have to be a developer or call IT to manage that. Again, as we work in this environment, let's take a look at a couple other items here. So as I go into my project or details or information that I'm managing, I may have sites or site content that I want to work with in terms of risks or issues or deliverables. Now remember, a list, a link, or a library, as I click on it here on the left, takes me into my risk environment. Here's all my risks. Again, my views, I can come up here and to create the views that I want to see and actually manage it from a little mini menu. And again, remember, you do need to activate your environment if you do want to tap that list up here. So some of those libraries are not fully rolled out, but we'll see these changes coming. So you'll see the same type of library and ribbon information that you will. But again, the ribbon is being kind of phased out for a much more functional view in your environment. Some of these will stay for a while. But if I go into my document here and say, hey, look, while I'm looking at my library, let me drop into a quick edit view. Now, if you haven't played around with Quick Edit, I love this. And the idea is that I get the best of Excel. So if I come in here and say, hey, listen, Sarah's really the person who we're going to assign all this to, I certainly can go and open and edit. I can type people's names. You can see a little edit here. I can attach links. But if you're looking closely, I can actually go in and autofill the information down. So I can come in here. I can make the modifications or changes, or I might put in Tim. Oh, there I am. Drop my name in here. And again, the idea is I've got this quick edit, or basically a quick edit view, where I can go back between the standard libraries and views to a spreadsheet view. It's very helpful, especially if you're trying to fill in lots of information with your list links, and it's especially depending on how you set up your libraries. So from a project management perspective, we really want to make sure our teams can get in, they can find the information. Some of us have been around when the first version of SharePoint rolled out, and it was a little bumpy because they made you fill out 100 fields before you could load a document in. Well, now it's really drag, drop, put the information in. You can create rules that autofill it. You can go into an Excel type view. But the idea is that we're treating this as a relational database where we have information, we can present and manage that. And whether it's a library or a list of issues or risks, I can attach these. If you're using Project 2016, or if you get the current licensing for just even Project Professional, if you decide to save and connect your data to Office 365, you can also tie your issues, risks, and documents directly into your Microsoft Project tasks. You've got visualization where you can drill right to a schedule, see an issue, see that it's slipping by a week, hit the document, it takes you right to the SharePoint site, or hit the issue or risk that you've attached to that. So some great functionality for us to work with. Again, SharePoint is not going away, but while you're looking at the expansion of other tools, they're going to be able to integrate more closely together. So as we're thinking in terms of views and details, or creating and adding fields here, again, very straightforward. I can go in. In fact, one of the things I really enjoy is that SharePoint is making available this OneNote Online. So literally, I can go in and create a OneNote document that allows me to put cost budgeting information and have interactive conversations at the same time. While one person's in typing notes, I can be in making modifications or note changes as well. And we can see that in a collaborative portal by just using your OneNote environment. Now, if you're a document manager and you come in, you can certainly take a document and organize it. In fact, we had one of our webinars, somebody asked, hey, listen, if we're going to our documents, what if I want to organize a OneNote document based upon lifecycle? And the idea is that you can certainly come in here and say, hey, listen, here's a OneNote document, but I'm going to load this in versus the entire site OneNote document. So some flexibility in terms of really how you're doing that and what you're working with. And I encourage you guys to go check out some of our other YouTube videos on how to use OneNote with the SharePoint environment, etc. Okay, now let's kind of wrap up our summary here. So one of the key elements is that you got to think about SharePoint as becoming what we refer to as the one version of truth. Really, instead of you going and emailing a file back and forth and having it passed around, what we'll do is say, hey, listen, by the fact that we're in here, let me go ahead and take my document library and let me just take this and I'm going to copy a link, or I'll share this. And I want to refer to people to where this is located at. So whether you're on 365 or let me jump down into my 2013 environment, is that I can come in here and say, hey, look, I really want people to actually have this. I can certainly share it, or I'm in a position that I want to make sure people get a link versus actually sending the artifact over. Again, you can put alerts and reminders with the information that you do have here. And of course, you're going to start seeing this ellipses appear over and over again. Again, share, follow, or connect. So in terms of us thinking about what we're wanting to do is that we want to tune your site navigation so that people find what they're looking for, whether it's internal, external, but as a project manager, keep your team and keep your sites fairly what I refer to as uncluttered, but give navigation to take you where you need to work with. Leverage your lists, your links, your libraries. You know what? If you don't need to put all those tasks in a project schedule, go and create a task list that might be similar to a racing matrix where you've got who's responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. You can create punch lists, and people can be notified if something's changed or been added. So the value is use this to actually be part of the supplemental tools that you work with. And for those of you that are moving to Office 365, you're going to see more and more elements like groups, teams, and certainly Office 365 Planner, which is a lightweight Kanban agile task management tool that is designed to not only integrate with Microsoft Project in the future, but it's being used by the rest of some of the Office 365 collaborative portal tools as well. Commonality between 2013, 2016, or 365, you're going to find very, very similar elements. But of course, Evergreen Cloud will always have the latest changes rolling out there. And again, don't forget, when you go into SharePoint, if you want to tune your document library, or if you're a new project manager and you don't know a lot about this, is that you can come in, drill into a library, check out your library settings. There is a ton of things here that you're going to be able to manage. You can talk about changing names. We could talk about validation. We get into form or form information. And you can also create columns, create new views directly here. So this is one of the great places you can go through is just look at your library settings and go and make a dummy site. Play with it. Test it out. See what these actually do for you. There's a lot of good information certainly online and available to work from. Okay, as we go through and looking at some of the overall elements, we want to collaborate, communicate, and depending on how well or how poorly your project's going, commiserate with your team in an online environment. So, Allison, are there any questions for us today?
Yes, John did have a question. Is there a way to import massive documents from folders and have them organized by metadata fields?
Ah, that's a really great question. So let me paraphrase. So the idea is that let's say we have a document library and it's in my file share, or maybe you do have a bunch of folders where you've stored information. Something that's very common, let me just pop into my SharePoint environment here. Let me pop out of my library settings, is that remember if I want to upload a document here, if I click on where it says upload, is that it'll actually drop in a place where I can go and grab different graphics and items, and I can select these, and then I can certainly open, or I can even just drag and drop them directly into a library. So I can move this information kind of in or out. But what I would recommend is if you have big libraries, let's say you've kind of created an archive or a history, or you have engineering documents, or you have design documents, you want to bring them in, but you don't want to bring everything in at the same time. What I recommend doing is if you're going to grab and move those artifacts in, remember how I showed you guys in some of the libraries that we work with here, is that I can go to this quick edit view. As you set up your library, what you can do is drag and drop the documents. Just drop them right in here. But then what I would do is add the columns that you want, and I would simply autofill that information down. Right? Remember, if I can bring those in and drop to a quick view where I can see that information of what I want to work with, is that in my view itself, if I hop over here and do a quick edit, I can autofill values down. And so what I'll do is I'll bring them over in batches. Now there's some other tools that will certainly let you do a lot more than that, and you can actually play around with some workflow options, but just simply drag, drop, put them in there, autofill, fill them out, with the metadata columns that you need, and then go ahead and bring the next batch. They will have empty placeholder values. So literally you could create views that say, show me everything that has no value in here, and then you can continue to modify that versus opening each and every document and modifying it. Wow, that was a really good question. I know I'm a little out of time, but I encourage you guys, if anytime you have a question, email us. We've been around for 25 years. This is what we love to do. So Allison, if I kind of come back to you and just say, yeah, if we haven't seen our other trials for Project Online, or if you have questions, email me directly or any one of our team. And of course, if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, definitely do that. But Allison, let me turn this back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. We do welcome your questions, suggestions, and we do want your feedback. For more information, please do contact us. Once you exit today's webinar, you will receive a short survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you do fill it out and complete it and submit the survey in order to get your PDUs. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Advisicon, Tim, and myself, we thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you in future webinars. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.